Life Mindset welcomes all of our dear audience. Those who mask their true intentions with morality are essentially doing so for their own benefit, attempting to control you. While they may appear to have your best interests at heart, their primary focus is their own gain. If you believe it's truly for your benefit, in the end, you'll end up paying the price with your entire life. I understand that what I'm sharing may be hard to grasp, so please remember to stay with me until the end to truly understand the ancient art of manipulation. Greetings to everyone. In today's video, we're going to explore 3 timeless yet incredibly valuable psychological manipulation tactics that many people remain unaware of. Be sure to watch several times to internalize this knowledge. The first manipulation technique is moral manipulation. Many individuals will claim, "I'm doing this for your own good," in an effort to manipulate others to achieve their personal goals. This technique can be especially tricky because it may seem like the person is genuinely trying to help you. You might even start doubting yourself, thinking something is wrong with you, when in fact, you've fallen into their manipulation trap. When I was 19, I had a girlfriend, and after a while, I realized that we were not a good match and wanted to break up. However, my father strongly opposed this decision and insisted that I get engaged to her. He went on about how wonderful she was to me, how much she cared, and how I shouldn't be dissatisfied with her. He said, "You'll regret it later if you don't appreciate her now. I've been through this, so think carefully." After hearing this, I became completely confused and began to blame myself. Was I really being too harsh? Maybe I didn't appreciate her enough. Thankfully, my father's words made me see the situation clearly, or else I would have missed out on a valuable lesson. I then told my father that I agreed to the engagement, and soon we held the engagement ceremony in our village, even setting the wedding date. However, the more I thought about it, the more something felt off. The two of us were clearly not a good match. What was wrong with breaking up? Was my father really acting in my best interest? Later, I discovered that my father was pleased because the bride's dowry was low, saving him some money, and having his son married would bring him prestige. It was all about his own benefit, and he almost jeopardized my future happiness. Ultimately, I made a calm decision to break up with her. When my father found out, he used a series of moral manipulations, but this time, I recognized his tactics and firmly insisted on breaking up. When he had no other options, he finally confessed, "They asked for such a low dowry, and you're breaking up? Do you think you'll ever find someone like her again? If you meet someone else who asks for a higher dowry, you'll have to deal with it. We don't have the money for that." His true intentions were revealed. I smiled and told him, "Don't worry, I plan to live independently and won't cost you a penny." As you can see, parents often employ moral manipulation tactics like, "You should get married soon, don't be too picky, or it'll be hard to find someone later." Or, "Don't start a business, it's too risky. What if you lose the investment? It's better to stay in your job." They claim it's for your own good, but the underlying message is that if you don't get married, it will bring shame to your family, or if you don't start a business, your family will lose face. Those who wear the mask of morality are essentially manipulating you for their own benefit. They may seem to care about you, but their true priority is their own interests. If you fully believe they are acting for your benefit, in the end, you will pay the price with your life. Second technique, labeling manipulation. People cannot be persuaded. They can only persuade themselves. All you need to do is identify the manipulation button behind someone, and you can control their behavior. For example, if you want someone to act a certain way, you simply need to label them, and they will gradually start acting according to that label. There's a story from a church where everyone had already left except for a little girl. The priest asked her, "Where are your parents?" She burst into tears and said that her parents had died in a car accident. The priest paused for a moment and then said, "You must be a child of God." Later, this girl became a famous writer and mentioned in her book that the priest's words had changed her life. This is the power of labeling. For instance, if you want your wife to cook delicious meals every day, you can label her as the head chef and praise her every time she cooks, regardless of whether the meal is good or not. Take photos, make videos, and share them with friends and family, saying that your wife is the best chef. The more you praise her, the prouder she will feel, and eventually, she will be happy to cook more delicious meals for you. Third technique, emotional manipulation. A few years ago, I had two close friends. One of them, whom we call Big Brother, borrowed money from the other friend and didn't pay it back for 2 or 3 years. When I asked him why he didn't ask Big Brother for the money back, he replied, "If I ask Big Brother for the money, I will seem stingy. Big Brother always says he treats me like his brother." This is a clear example of emotional manipulation. From that point on, I made a vow never to engage in sibling-like relationships with anyone. When someone behaves this way, be cautious. If the conversation revolves solely around emotions, don't bring up money. Those who manipulate emotions do so for their own benefit, so you must be careful not to fall into their trap. Emotional manipulation is quite simple but difficult to execute effectively. There are 2 key points. 1. Talk about emotions with the other person, but without using real emotions. 2. Only discuss emotions with those who can bring you personal benefits. Once the benefits stop, the emotions will end immediately. If you cannot do these 2 things, don't attempt emotional manipulation, or you will end up being the one manipulated. If you've watched this far, consider it a gift. Not many people are aware of these techniques. These 3 schools of thought, Confucianism, legalism, and Taoism, serve as the foundation of how ancient thinkers shaped our world. Let's discuss how we can apply them today. Application in business. Looking at the modern world, it's clear that while ancient methods may not compare to modern technology, the depth and wisdom of ancient thinkers were profound. Take the spring and autumn period, for example, a time when hundreds of states were constantly at war. Great thinkers like Confucius, Lao Tzu, and Han Feizi emerged during this time. These thinkers were products of their environment, forged by constant conflict, which led to powerful ideas that continue to influence us today. Why did such great minds emerge during that period? The answer lies in war. During that time, kingdoms were constantly at war, and each one was researching ways to defeat the others. They documented these strategies in writing, which laid the foundation for great philosophical thought. In contrast, in the peaceful era we live in now, we don't face the same intense pressure to innovate, which is why great thinkers have become rarer. Let's now focus on applying these schools of thought to modern businesses. In business, you can apply the principles of Confucianism, legalism, and Taoism to manage and grow effectively. For example, Confucianism emphasizes the importance of tradition and respect for hierarchy, which can help build a cohesive company culture. Legalism, with its focus on rules and punishment, can help create a structured and efficient organization. Taoism, with its focus on harmony and the natural flow of things, can encourage flexibility and creativity within your business. The Taoist approach suggests that you should not force things, but allow them to unfold naturally. This can be applied in business by letting employees work freely and creatively without micromanagement. However, as the company grows larger, a more structured approach using legalism may be necessary to maintain order and efficiency. Let's continue discussing the different schools of thought in ancient Chinese philosophy, particularly Confucianism, legalism, and Taoism. Confucianism emphasizes a return to tradition, advocating for the restraint of one's impulses and the adherence to established rituals to reach the highest ideals. However, during the Warring States period, a time of intense conflict, the strict adherence to rituals was seen as rigid and ineffective. Confucius and his disciples struggled to find employment as their traditional methods seemed outdated in the face of constant warfare. This illustrates that Confucianism, in its strictest form, failed to address the practical needs of the time, as it was based on an idealistic view of order and harmony that no longer aligned with the harsh realities of the day. In contrast, legalism took a very different approach. Legalists argued that traditional rituals and Confucian thinking were disconnected from the needs of the time. They believed that the focus should be on law and order, using strict rules and harsh punishments to maintain control over society. Legalism was a response to the chaos of the Warring States period, proposing that law and discipline were necessary to preserve stability in a fractured world. In this context, Legalism was seen as practical and suitable for governance, especially in times of war and upheaval. A famous example of legalism is the story of Han Feizi, who criticized the Confucian obsession with tradition and rituals. He argued that without laws and control, society would collapse into chaos. Legalism, in this sense, emphasized the importance of control, efficiency, and the application of laws to maintain order. The concept of the law of the jungle was applied, where survival and success depended on who could dominate, much like the saying, "A good cat is one that catches mice." Legalism was not only about controlling people, but also about reforming the social structure. By emphasizing laws over birthright, legalism helped dismantle traditional hierarchies. This idea was implemented during the reign of Emperor Qin Shi Huang, who used legalism to unify China. However, the very same principles that allowed him to conquer the warring states ultimately contributed to the collapse of his empire shortly after his death. This contradiction reveals the limitations of legalism in governing a lasting empire. While legalism can quickly seize power, its methods can also lead to its downfall, as the people grow weary of oppression and exploitation. Taoism, on the other hand, offers a completely different perspective. Taoism rejects the idea of control and emphasizes the concept of wu wei, non-action, which suggests that the best way to approach the world is by aligning with the natural flow of things rather than forcing change. Laozi, a key figure in Taoism, believed that constant intervention and the desire to control everything only leads to chaos. Instead, Taoism advocates for letting things happen naturally, encouraging spontaneity, and letting go of the need for rigid structure. In governance, this would mean allowing the natural order to unfold and intervening as little as possible. An example of Taoism's approach to non-intervention can be found in the story of Zhuangzi and his friend, Hui Shi, a high-ranking official. When Zhuangzi visited the state of Hui, he told Hui that he had no interest in competing for political power. He believed that life was about living freely and without the burden of titles or status. This Taoist attitude of escaping worldly affairs is rooted in the belief that the world will naturally find balance if left alone. Taoism encourages detachment from the material world, urging people to prioritize inner peace and spiritual growth. The Taoist view of life was succinctly illustrated in Zhuangzi's story of the phoenix, who only rests on a special tree and eats a specific fruit. The point of the story was that the phoenix would never compete for the ordinary and would remain free from worldly desires, much like Taoism advocates for disengagement from material pursuits. Taoism believes that to properly deal with the world, one must adopt a mindset of non-attachment, not clinging to any particular goals or outcomes. This non-attachment is key to inner peace and balanced governance. Taoism's concept of non-action means allowing things to unfold as they naturally will, rather than trying to force change or manipulate outcomes. In contrast, Confucianism and legalism both focus on external actions. Confucianism on ritual and tradition, legalism on law and punishment, while Taoism emphasizes the importance of inner peace, spontaneity, and the natural flow of things. All three philosophies offer valuable lessons, but Taoism stands out for its emphasis on non-interference, which some might argue could be the most effective approach in today's complex world. In terms of applying these philosophies to modern business, the first step is to understand how Confucianism, legalism, and Taoism were historically used to shape the governance of ancient China. Once you understand their historical applications, you can apply these principles to manage and grow a successful business. During the Warring States period, China was divided into multiple smaller states, each with its own rulers. In this context, legalism was the most effective philosophy for managing war and ensuring the success of military campaigns. Leaders needed strict rules and laws to maintain order during such chaotic times. However, when it comes to governing in peacetime, different philosophies may be more applicable. For instance, in the early days of China's unification under the Qin dynasty, legalism was essential for consolidating power. However, after Qin Shi Huang's death, the system quickly collapsed because it was built on exploitation and oppression. This reveals that while legalism may be effective in the short term, it is not sustainable in the long term. The Han dynasty, which succeeded the Qin, adopted a more balanced approach by blending Confucian principles with legalism. This hybrid approach allowed the Han to maintain stability and prosperity for centuries. In business, this means that while you might need strict control and order in the early stages of growth, like legalism, once your company matures, it will benefit from the softer approach of Confucianism and Taoism. The Han Dynasty's ability to last was largely due to the flexibility of their governance system. They combined the Confucian focus on moral leadership and education with the legalist need for efficiency and control. This is an important lesson for any leader or business owner. You need to be able to adapt your leadership style based on the circumstances you face. As you grow your business, you may find that initially you need a strong, controlling approach to ensure everything runs smoothly. However, as your company becomes more established, it's important to give your team more autonomy and embrace the natural flow of things. Like Taoism's concept of Wu Wei, sometimes the best way to lead is to step back and let your team work without excessive interference. In summary, while the legalist approach may help you seize power quickly, it is the Confucian and Taoist principles that will help you maintain it in the long term. Confucianism helps you build a strong, loyal team. Taoism allows for creativity and adaptability, and legalism ensures efficiency and discipline. By combining these philosophies, you can create a strong foundation for your business to thrive. So, when managing a business, remember to use legalism in the early stages to establish control and growth. As your business matures, implement Confucian principles for internal culture and Taoist principles for balance and flexibility. This combination will help ensure long-term success. When your business grows to a certain size, you'll need to move away from micromanagement and allow your team the freedom to innovate and take risks. However, you must also maintain control over key operations and processes, especially if your company is facing competition. By learning from these ancient philosophies, you can avoid the mistakes of the past and build a business that is both successful and sustainable. The balance between control and freedom, tradition and innovation is key to thriving in today's dynamic business environment. The most important lesson here is that Confucianism, legalism, and Taoism can all be applied in modern business. As you grow and scale your business, you'll need to use all three in different ways to achieve long-term success. So take the time to understand these ancient philosophies and think about how they can be applied to your business. By using legalism to control and structure your business in the early stages, Confucianism to build strong relationships with your team, and Taoism to allow for creativity and flexibility, you'll be able to create a business that lasts.